frost and a risk of spot flooding. Lowest temperatures of 12 to 14 degrees. And now you're up to date on News Talk.
The Newsround on Off the Ball.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
This is News Talk.
Now, you wasn't long. Interesting times on and off the field when it comes to Irish football. We'll talk to Brian Kerr this hour, and then Dan McDonnell is with us on the football show after 9 o'clock. Stateside last week, the Milwaukee Bucks prompted a wave of boycotting across American sports. We will talk to Dr. Harry Edwards about what he is now calling the fifth wave of American sports activism. That's coming your way after 8 o'clock. Good evening. 53106 is the text number. We're at Off the Ball on Twitter. We have Richie McCormack with us. Hello.
Hey, Joe.
How you doing? And still with the freshness of Abbottstown in his hair, Nathan Murphy. Hello to you. You're back.
Evening, lads.
How was your day at Abbottstown yesterday? Long? Enjoyable?
It was fine. Well, I was there a couple of times because I was there in the morning for the exciting part, the first Stephen Kenny training session, to watch a few minutes of that, and then back for, well, maybe the more important part in many ways, but the drudgery, I guess, of covering a Zoom AGM and EGM, which I know you were talking with Dan McDonnell about. It was short and sweet in the end. It was all done and dusted pretty much by 9 o'clock. We've obviously heard what Roy Barrett had to say, and is very clear in his view that there is no major conflict of interest. That ended up, I think, overshadowing what was the main story, was that they got this through and that they got the access to government funding, they hope within even the next week potentially, that the FAI so desperately needed. But as we touched on last night, as is the way with the FAI, there's never just one story. There's always something.
I didn't realise you'd been over and back. I thought maybe you'd gone to training and then had a packed lunch and waited in the car and been there for
Did you go to the Blanche Centre, basically?
I didn't. Usually I might pop in, but just with COVID at the moment, I'm just, keep the head down. Keep the head down.
The EGM situation and the Bank of Ireland Patrick Kennedy recommendation of Roy Barrett to AMROP for the position of chairman, it blew up in a pretty big way yesterday. Roy Barrett was unequivocal. He doesn't think it's a conflict of interest. He doesn't believe he was compromised in any way. Gary Owens was on the show last night. He conceded it could be viewed that way. Maybe it should have been declared earlier in this whole process. My sense on the whole, on balance at this stage today, 24 hours on, is it's not ideal by any means. Certainly not the way it blows up 7-8 months on. And maybe it's a strike against Roy Barrett and Gary Owens and Niall Quinn, but it's a hiccup as opposed to some kind of fatal blow or some kind of controversy that they're going to have to see out over the coming days.
Yeah, I think it's very different from when we were right in the heat of the FAI crisis under John Delaney, when public opinion had very much gone against him personally and the FAI in general. I think a lot of fatigue has crept in terms of FAI governance matters, that there's so many different angles to this. Even last night, with the importance of the EGM, has been overshadowed by something else. So an awful lot of people have just thrown their eyes to heaven and want to get on with the football again. I think in terms of where Roy Barrett and those members of the visionary group, the original members of the visionary group, go, a lot will depend on the coming days as to if anything else emerges. If actually this is just a story and Patrick Kennedy and Roy Barrett know each other, Patrick Kennedy recommends them, but they never actually had a conversation about it, and then Patrick Kennedy wasn't involved in the renegotiation of the FAI loan, I think they will be able to move on and make their appointment of a permanent CEO. But there is always that drip feed of information, which means it just never seems to go away. And I think the football journalists who are covering this are going to be, as they should be, looking to uncover whatever they can. And there are questions from within the FAI as well, as you'll be heard from Larry Bass on this morning's OTB AM, the chairman of Cabinteely, who's on the finance committee that has yet to actually come together to meet, that he has questions. Other people, we understand, at the EGM last night had questions. So they're from within, from without. But I think in general, the public are a little bit just fed up with it all at this stage.
Yeah, I get that sense. We should start the news round. It is with thanks to Gillette. We don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters. And Richie, the Irish team have made the trip to Bulgaria.
Yeah, they've flown to Sofia ahead of Thursday's Nations League game with Bulgaria. The entire squad has tested negative for COVID-19. Despite Bulgaria not being on Ireland's green travel list, the squad have been granted a government dispensation to travel. The Bulgaria and Finland games are a first chance to view Stephen Kenny's formula for an Ireland side. And fullback Enda Stevens doesn't think Kenny's path to the national team makes him inferior to anyone that's gone before him.
His path into football is his path. Everyone has a different path into football, and he's worked his way up now to manage the the international team, the senior men's team, and that's, as I said, it's the pinnacle of my career playing for my country. I'm sure it's the pinnacle of his career playing for his or managing his country. So no, I think it's your pass is your pass, and he's as hungry and determined to do as well as I am, and every player here.
I think we're all looking forward to the day, Nathan. The players as well, where they don't have to be asked about Stephen Kenny, his CV, all of this stuff.
Yeah, I don't know when that day is going to be. Maybe a win on Thursday night and everybody quickly moves on. I wouldn't be fully convinced. I mentioned last night being out of training and seeing the first 15 minutes and going back to the great old days of Trapattoni when we get in for the last 15 minutes and they'd be playing their training match and they'd have the bibs on and you could tell exactly who was going to start. Trapattoni didn't care, named the team anyways, 2 hours later. The FAI had a video out this morning, sort of a quick recap on YouTube of the first day of training. And actually, they had some footage in it of a later part of the session yesterday where they were doing some shooting practice and also some little overlaps and wingers getting involved and just some more game-like practice. And they had bibs on. And there were 2 different teams. And you could see it when you slowed it down who the 2 teams were. Which of these would you prefer in terms of midfield and an attack, Joe? Mm-hmm. So one of them was a midfield 3 of McCarthy, Hendrick and Howerhan, which seems quite realistic.
It seems suspiciously like the team on Thursday.
And a front 3 of O'Dowda, McLean and Long. So that was one grouping. The other grouping was Arter, Malumbi and Brady as the midfield 3. Mm-hmm. And then a front 3 of Robinson, Ida and Connolly. So I don't know if it's a mix and match where actually you've got the first midfield and the second front 3, which kind of was the suspicion I had at the start of the week of what it might be. Or again, are you looking at one for Thursday, one for Sunday? But there's a pretty clear divide there.
Well, you would certainly think McCarthy, Hendrick, Howerhan is the midfield.
I don't know. I don't know. The way Kenny has spoken about Harry Arter in the past few months in a few different press briefings and press conferences suggests that he's not all that far away from a start on Thursday or maybe even on, Sunday. And then Malumbi's the other one as well, because a lot of people are kind of pushing for his inclusion. And we heard Kenny Cunningham the other morning, on OTBAM, saying that Malumbi's one of these people with a bit of fire in his belly that could well make that step up from 21s. So I don't know. I would say that midfield, that forward line is a lock. Like Robinson, Ida and Connolly looks like the front 3. The midfield, I'm not so sure about.
I think Hendrick's a certainty. I think Hendrick's a certainty to start pretty much every game for Stephen Kenny. Just I think the energy. I think he'll feel he can get him back to that Euro 2016 confident player with those runs from deep. And if McCarthy's fit, whatever, and you're right, he has spoken very highly about Harry Arter at any possible opportunity, but he's spoken in even greater terms about James McCarthy. There's obviously the fitness doubt, but I'd just be shocked if McCarthy, if he's fit, if he doesn't start. And I think Hendrick is a definite to start. Maybe it always felt like it was one of maybe Brady, Malumbi or Howerhan. Or maybe they were perfectly happy for this to go out there and for us to waste 5 minutes talking about it tonight and he knows exactly what he's at.
I don't think so. I think this is like when Nick Faldo gets photographed before the Ryder Cup with the teams written on a sheet and then afterwards tries to pretend, oh no, it was the sandwich orders. They were for the sandwiches. That's all it was.
Once again, I'm going to go to bat for anybody who's more intelligent than Nick Faldo, and in this case, I think it's Stephen Kenny.
I dare say Nathan, you've uncovered something there. I think McCarthy, Hendrick, Howerhan sounds like the nailed-on midfield that he'll start with, and Long with that bit of experience away from home rather than throwing in Ida, I can see that, and then McLean, I can see that, and O'Dowda, I can see that. I think you may have uncovered the starting 11 there, which he'll now, of course, have to change. He'll have to change now that we found it, which means, either way, I've got to get out here.
But I'd be interested to see what people think of that team. But also, it would be the clearest insight into what a change of manager can do, because that's not a change in team. That's not a new era for Irish football of all these young 19, 20, 21-year-olds been thrown in. They're the other 6. This is actually the old guard who we were told weren't good enough, who couldn't play a on-the-front foot style of football, actually been told to go and do that. So maybe that's part of his plan. They obviously have the experience of going away to the likes of Bulgaria. There's no atmosphere, but of an away game where it mightn't be as straightforward. So I think it'd be fascinating if that was the 6 to see if the names don't change, but if the style and system and the ethos still does change.
Yeah, well, I think you've perfectly summed up what we're looking at. Yeah, I think that's the most likely scenario for Thursday at least. Rich, Friday night, we're at the Aviva.
Yeah, Graham Rowntree says Munster have no issue with a 5-day turnaround. They're due to play Leinster in that Pro 14 semi-final, just 5 days removed from a win over Connacht. Leinster changed their entire starting 15 for last weekend's win over Ulster, a luxury not afforded to Munster. But their forwards coach doesn't think the short gap between games is a major problem.
We're not spoke about the turnaround. We're ready for another game. It's coming Friday night. It's great for us. We're ready, and we're having such a long time away from the game, and suddenly we're back into it. And then we've got another big game Friday night, and our performances at certain areas of the game are just getting better and better. We're peaking. We're peaking at the right time, ready for knockout rugby.
I kind of forgot Graham Rowntree was involved for a moment until was it this weekend or last weekend? Maybe it was Sunday when Munster scored a try and Graham Rowntree was just gazing intently but lovingly at Johan van Graan for several moments. It was caught on camera. They really have invested a lot, Nathan. You look at Munster, Stephen Larkham's there, Rowntree's there. That's a fairly stellar backroom team now to go with Diolande and Sneeman.
Yeah, again, going over all ground of Sneeman's injury, but he's fit, Joey Carberry's fit, and you look at that back line with Conor Murray over the last couple of weeks, looking somewhere back to where he once was. You're heading into a brand new season. She's full of confidence and looking like there's no excuse. When you look at the management team that they've put together over the last 2 or 3 years, you look at the group of players, so many of them right at the peak of their career, there are no excuses. But unfortunately, injuries mean there probably are still a couple, unfortunately.
Andrew Brace has the job of trying to figure out the breakdown this week, Richie.
He does indeed. He's been confirmed as referee for that game at the Aviva, while Frank Murphy will be in charge of Ulster's semi-final with Edinburgh. Jacob Stockdale and Stuart McCloskey are being monitored this week after suffering what the province are calling contusions, bruising to me and you, in last week's loss to Leinster. It's a positive upbeat note on Stockdale, who limped out of that game with Leinster. Meanwhile, a concussion sustained against his former side means that Geordie Murphy's following the return to play protocols and a major doubt for Saturday's game at Murrayfield.
Europa League draws?
Yeah, we know who Dundalk and Shamrock Rovers and others will be getting if they manage to get past their second qualifying round opponents. Dundalk will be away to the Moldovan side Sheriff Tiraspol in the third qualifying round if they beat the Andorrans of Inter Descaldes. Should Shamrock Rovers get past AC Milan, they'll face either Bodo Glimt of Norway or Lithuanian side Zalgiris. Tottenham will travel to the Romanian side Botoșani or Scandia of Macedonia if they get past Lokomotiv Plovdiv. Celtic will travel to either Latvian side Riga or Tre Fiori of San Marino in the third qualifying round. They might have Shane Duffy in their squad for that one if reports this evening are to be believed. Rangers will face Progress Niederkorn or Willem II if the Glasgow Cub beat Lincoln Red Imps of Gibraltar. And Aberdeen will play Sporting in Portugal if they beat Viking, while Motherwell or Coleraine will be away to KF Lachi or Hapoel Beersheva. A lot of ifs, buts and maybes in those. One certainty though, Arsenal completing the €30 million signing of Lille defender Gabriel Magalhaes. The 22-year-old signed a long-term contract at the Emirates today. He's Arsenal's second major defensive arrival of the summer after William Saliba finally completed his move from Saint Etienne after a year back on loan at the Ligue 1 side. It's a summer where Arsenal have also signed William, but for full-back Kieran Tierney, giving a new contract to Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang will be the icing on the cake.
Oh, hopefully, man. He's brilliant for the team, brilliant for me playing with him as well, and he's an absolute joy. Like one of the best guys, most humble guys I've ever met as well. So to play with him, and he's captain of the team, a great captain, leads by example. And if we can sign him, I'll be absolutely buzzing, to be honest. It'll be brilliant for us.
Assuming Aubameyang stays, what's a very good season for Arsenal this year, Nathan?
I was thinking top four would be obviously a massive improvement on last season. I was just listening to and watching the coverage on BT of the Community Shield, where their sense afterwards seemed to be that even that would still be a stretch for Arsenal, that they were so far behind, and because Manchester United are strengthening the way they have, Chelsea have strengthened the way they have, and Liverpool and Manchester City, we don't expect to go away, that it's unrealistic to think that Arsenal can break through. But they've been brilliant over the end of the season and into the FA Cup final and the Community Shield. Granted, it's 2 games and it is Arsenal. It's going to take a lot for us to trust them. But I think if Aubameyang stays, they should be expecting to, at the very least, contest for the top 4. Like, okay, the others have invested more, but not even in the mix come March for a top 4, I think it'd be a poor season for Arsenal.
US Open's on, Rich.
Yeah, Andy Murray has lost the first 2 sets of his first round match to Yoshihito Nishioka of Japan, 6-4, 6-4. He's also down a break in the third. Not looking good for the Scot, who's playing his first Grand Slam match since the first round of the 2019 Australian Open. Elsewhere today, women's 10 seed Garbiñe Muguruza through to round 2 following a straight sets win over Japan's Nao Hibino. There have also been wins for women's 16 seed Elise Mertens and the 22nd seed Amanda Anisimova. Serena Williams is in first round action against her fellow American Christy Ahn tonight, while her sister Venus goes up against the 20th seed Karolina Muchova. Last night, 2018 champion Naomi Osaka wore a face mask before and after her win over Masaki Doi, bearing the name of Breonna Taylor. Osaka says she has a different mask with the name of a victim of racial violence for each match over the fortnight at Flushing Meadows. Taylor was a 26-year-old paramedic that was shot and killed by 3 plainclothes police officers in Kentucky in March, and Osaka has been explaining her reasoning for wearing the masks.
For me, I just want to spread awareness. Like, I'm aware that tennis is watched all over the world, and maybe that there's someone that doesn't know, Breonna Taylor's story. So maybe they'll like Google it after or something. So for me, just spreading awareness, and like, I feel like the more the people know this story, then the more, interesting or interested they'll become in it.
Interesting time over there, to say the least. Dr. Harry Edwards is going to join us after 8 o'clock. He was very involved in the Black Power salute at the Mexico Games in 1968. He is an expert in this field. He has described what we're seeing now as the 5th wave of sports activism in the States. Colin Kaepernick was the 4th wave, and we're now into a new era, he feels. So it will be interesting to bring you his thoughts after 8 o'clock, hopefully. On the Andy Murray front, I hadn't actually realised he was back playing, Richie. I was just doing a Google there while we were hearing from Naomi Osaka. So, and this probably, I don't know, this is from a piece a couple of weeks ago from PA. So Andy Murray pumped to be playing his first Grand Slam. It's his first major tournament since he had surgery to insert a metal hip in January 2019. So am I right in saying Andy Murray just has a metal hip now?
Partially, yeah. He's come through pretty much hell to get back. If we cast our minds back to, I'm trying to think, was it this last year's US Open? There was one of the Grand Slams anyway. I think it might have been the end of the Australian Open that year where he played the first round and got beaten, where they'd produced a video package essentially retiring him. Like, there was video tributes paid to him from his peers, and it basically looked like the end. And quietly and slowly and methodically, and probably aided a little bit by the COVID break over the past 6 months, he's chipped away at his recovery. He's played a few exhibition events, played these best of British events like Kyle Edmund they're involved in a month or two ago. He got warmed up at the Western and Southern there, also Flushing Meadows prior to this. And he seemed, okay, but I guess this is the true measure of where he is in his recovery and where he needs to be. Like, nobody's expecting him to be at full tilt. Nobody's expecting him, given his age profile and his injury profile, to be the player he once was and winning and contesting Grand Slams. But he's up against the world number 49 here. Nishioka's given away, I think it's 6 or 7 inches in height, and he's still managing to get a lot of first serves past Murray this evening. Just Murray's not at it yet. The hope is that at some stage, probably into next year, deep into next year, he will be. I wouldn't expect him to test himself too hard at the French Open later on in the year, because Clay's never been his friend. But once we get around to touch wood an Australian Open in January and back to maybe Wimbledon next summer, he'll be looking okay. But this is still a feeling out process for him, I think.
Did you see the interview last night with Karolina Pliskova?
No.
After her match? She was live in studio technically, because they had her there as a hologram. So the post-match interview was conducted. I'm not sure if this was on Amazon or if it was on the American channels. The post-match interview was the TV presenter. So say, Joe, you're on Virgin Media doing the Six Nations, and you're going to talk to Johnny Sexton after the match. You're standing looking at Johnny Sexton 5 feet away from you, even though you're out in Ballymount and he's on the pitch. I don't know what the real benefit of it is, but it looks class.
Euro 2016, they were doing this. Sorry, Richie. I think we're saying the same thing. When David Ginola is the host, obviously, he's like the Gary Lineker over in France. So in 2016, the player would tend to sit on a stool in the tunnel, and it would appear as if the player was in the studio sitting on a stool next to Ginola and his co-host.
As Nathan mentions, like, I don't really see it. Like, it's impressive and it's brilliant. It's almost like bringing your toy to mass on Christmas morning, because you're just basically going, look what I have and look what I can play with for the next 6 weeks, 6 months, whatever. But like, everybody knows that the manager or the player is not there in the studio. Everybody knows that the presenter is not there in the tunnel. So there's this weird conceit that we just have to be okay with the fact that they look like they're beside each other, even though they're still doing the 1 second, 2 second delay of going, yeah, okay, yeah, and coming in. It's just, it's flashy and kind of needless, but also impressive at the same time.
Yeah, welcome to
We should
TV.
get it, basically. We should get it.
We should.
We could be back sitting in studio with you, Joe.
Exactly. How great would that be?
Let's invest a huge amount of money so that it can appear as if you two are sitting beside me. I agree.
I don't see what the problem is there.
So Latour continues.
Yeah, Primož Roglic won today's fourth stage of the Tour de France. It's the first kind of dalliance with the mountains. He led home a group that contained yellow jersey wearer Julian Alaphilippe, former winner Egan Bernal and Nairo Quintana. And Nicholas Roach, a good day for him. He was just 28 seconds down on that leading group and is 24th overall. And also a good day for Sam Bennett. He is level on points with the green jersey holder Peter Sagan in the points race. I have to remind ourselves it's very early on, but he is competing for these intermediate sprints throughout the stages, and obviously has picked up 2 top 4 finishes over the course of the last or the first 3 stages too. So a decent race for Bennett so far.
Last couple of stories, Rich.
Yeah, we're used to kind of, I guess, transfers going one way on the island, but Stephen Mallon has played his last game for the Republic of Ireland at international level. Mallon's opted to switch allegiance to Northern Ireland instead. The Belfast native was capped by the North's under-15s, but has since played for the Republic at under-18, 19 and under-21 level. He's a Sheffield United winger currently on loan at Derry City, who won 2 Republic of Ireland under-21 caps under Stephen Kenny in 2019. He says a switch to the North is better for his career profile. And also Ben White has ended speculation about a move to Leeds United by signing a new contract with Brighton. The defender's deal now runs until June of 2024. White was on loan when he helped Leeds win the championship last season as they gained promotion back to the Premier League. The Yorkshire club had 3 bids for him, turned down this summer. He's signing a new contract at the Amex.
Okay, very good. I want Stephen Kenny to produce one of John Giles's all-time 11-style selections. 4 defenders, 6 strikers, says John. Nathan's been following Mayo too long. He's deluded if he thinks Arsenal are in with a shout of making the top 4. No chance.
I'd go along with Nathan on this one, to be honest. I like what Arteta's done there so far. He's done so far what I thought would actually be the most impossible thing, which would be to change the mentality of that squad. Which and they're not as flaky, or at least they haven't looked as flaky in the last run of matches this season. And I think if he can carry that over into the start of next, he has the talent to actually do something in that league. They need a midfield though.
I will humbly disagree. I think they won't be within 8 points of the top 4.
You can use the term arse's roar if you want, Joe.
It'll be Liverpool, then Man City, then
Man City are about to sign Lionel Messi.
Probably Chelsea. About 10 points behind Man City, there'll be Chelsea, and United pretty close to Chelsea. And then another 8 points back, one of the others, maybe Arsenal. Man City are not going to... Where are we in the legal situation with Messi? I thought that La Liga had...
I don't know, but I think it'll be... And we'll get a lot more into Premier League previews next week, I'm sure. I think it'll be a lot more bunched than that.
Yeah.
I think the Chelsea, Manchester United will close the gap on the top 2 considerably, and then Spurs, Arsenal as well will be that bit stronger. So it may be 8 points, but I do think they need to be in a position, Arsenal, with 7-8 games to go, that they have a bit of hope.
Totally.
Not be closer to the relegation zone than the top 4.
No, absolutely. We won't be doing the Arsenal season is over at Christmas piece is kind of where they need to be. They need to be in the mix. I would still think 10 points between whoever is in second place and third, give or take. But that is a closing of the gap. That's how big the gap is now. It's ridiculous. Nathan, thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Cheers, Joe.
And Richie McCormack, I will talk to you tomorrow. Next up, we are talking to Brian Kerr.
When you come in the arena and you see me play, you see me